What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is a series where I go into great detail with all of the stats as well as some excellent attachment combinations for every gun in Modern Warfare 2. And in today's episode, we're finally moving into the LMG category, and we're going to start it off with the Sakin MG38. And starting it off as always, let's get into our damage profile, and with this gun, it's going to be a 3 to 4 shot kill. And at least in the maximum damage range, you just have to hit at least 1 or 2 torso to upper torso shots to maintain a 3-shot kill. So it is very forgiving within close range situations. However, once you start to get to mid range, then it does have to be upper torso shots, or you have to mix some headshots in there as well. And speaking of headshots, they're not particularly useful with this gun. In the first 2 damage ranges, they're never going to reduce the number of shots to kill compared to upper torso shots at least. However, at a distance, if you hit 2 headshots mixed in with an upper torso shot, you can still get a 3-shot kill. After that, let's move on to our rate of fire, but before we do that, we do have an open bolt delay with this gun, and what this means is when you pull the trigger, the gun doesn't immediately fire. There is a slight delay before that first round is fired, and then every round after that, if you just hold down the trigger, that will fire normally. So it's just with the first shot fired, this delay is 22 milliseconds. Now, outside of that, our rate of fire is 652 rounds per minute, and what this means is our time to kill potential with a 3-shot kill is 184 milliseconds, whereas with a 4-shot kill, it's 276 milliseconds. This is a great time to kill up close, although when we're looking at this in practical terms, you may want to add that open bolt delay to the time to kill potential, since that would accurately describe a situation where you see a player, you react, and you pull the trigger. However, I do like keeping those separate because it doesn't apply to all situations. But then let's move on to our bullet velocity, which is just standard for LMGs and very good at 700 meters per second. You should generally have no problem with this bullet travel time, at least in the 6v6 maps. Then let's have a look at our range values, and as we can see here, our first 3-shot kill range, this is the one where as long as you're hitting at least a bullet or 2 to the torso, you're going to get a very consistent 3-shot kill. This extends out to 35.5 meters, which is amazing for a maximum damage range. And then our 3-shot kill potential extends all the way out to 61 meters, which is a crazy good range in this game. However, within that range, you do have to make sure you're hitting those upper torso shots, or maybe mixing a headshot in there to maintain that 3-shot kill. As for hipfire, we've got very standard hipfire for LMGs, and that is to say it's not very good at hipfiring, so generally speaking, unless you're point blank, you do want to try to get aimed down sight. And speaking of aiming down sight, let's have a look at our idle sway, and as you can see here, there's definitely some movement with our aim, and it moves fairly quickly, but it doesn't move around in a really large area, so it may come into play, especially if you're trying to stretch the ranges out. You do have to be aware of it, but it's not that horrible at least. Next up, let's have a look at our recoil, and I just did 30 round recoil plots just to keep things under control and make it a little easier to see what's going on. You're typically not going to be firing a full 100 round magazine. And with this gun, it's very accurate and easy to control. It kicks upward and a little bit to the left, but the magnitude is very minimal, and it's just easy to manage this recoil in my experience, even at really long ranges. Now, let's move on to our handling stats, and our aim down sight speed is 460 milliseconds, which is pretty slow for this game. It's not the slowest aim down sight time in the game, but it is quite slow, so you really do have to treat this like an LMG. And it's the same story with our sprint out time. It's pretty standard for an LMG, but that's to say that it is quite slow, and therefore this gun is just not suited for aggression. After that, we can get into our reload add time, and this is quite slow. It's the second slowest in the game at 6.3 seconds. So you really need to take your time and find a good spot to get a reload in, because it is going to take you out of the fight for a decent period of time. And then finally, for our base stats, let's have a look at our mobility with the Sakin MG, and as we can see here, it's pretty much just average across the board for an LMG, and that means it is quite slow compared to like assault rifles and battle rifles and SMGs, for instance, which is of course no surprise with an LMG. They're not really built for mobility. And that finally wraps it up for all of the base stats of the gun. However, I wanted to look at some of the attachments, and we're going to start this off with the barrel attachments and how they impact our ranges. And as you can see here, we've got 3 barrel attachments. The first one will reduce our ranges by 10%, whereas the second 2 will both give us the same range increase at 16%. Honestly though, I don't feel like this gun really needs a boost to its ranges. It's got an amazing base range, and even reducing it by 10% isn't going to be the end of the world. As for how these barrels impact our recoil, honestly, none of them seem to have a really large impact on our recoil, with the one exception being the 20-inch Bruen Silver series. This one very noticeably cuts down on the total magnitude of recoil, and it definitely makes this gun more accurate and easy to control. And then finally for the barrel attachments, let's have a look at how they impact our aim down sight time. And as you can see here, the first barrel will cut down our aim down sight time by about 20 milliseconds, which is a nice improvement. Whereas the second barrel will increase our aim down sight time up to 505 milliseconds, and the 20-inch Bruen Silver Series will increase our aim down sight time all the way up to 540 milliseconds, which is very, very slow. Now, I also wanted to have a look at our aim down sight speeds using the different magazine attachments. We have access to a 125 round belt mag or a 150 round box magazine on this. And the first one increases our aim down sight time up to 500 milliseconds, whereas the second one increases it all the way up to 535 milliseconds. Honestly, I personally feel that a 100 round magazine is more than enough, and I don't like hurting the aim down sight speed unnecessarily, and therefore I typically avoid these two magazines unless I've got a really niche build for like shooting down streaks, for instance. And with that, it's finally time to move into some excellent attachment combinations for you guys, and the first one I'm going to share is my all-arounder, and I love using this build. I was actually very impressed by this. With it, we've got the OLEV laser, the second Tread 40 muzzle, the second side grip, which is a unique underbarrel to this. It helps with our aiming stability much more than the shark fin while having no downsides to it whatsoever, so it's just a great addition on this build. We've got armor-piercing rounds so we can punch through surfaces a little bit more effectively, as well as take down streaks more effectively. And then finally, we've got the Bruen Q900 grip wrap. And with this, our aim down sight speed is improved actually over the base, which I was surprised to see, at 445 milliseconds, so you can be slightly more aggressive than the base version of the gun at least. And the same thing goes with our sprint out time. This is actually very noticeably improved, and it allows you to be a bit more aggressive. And the best part about this is we're still getting a better recoil pattern than the base recoil with all of these attachments equipped. And this is something that's very rare to see in this game. It's rare that you can improve both your handling as well as your recoil control. And this build allows you to do that, which is great. So that right there is definitely my preferred build with this gun. However, I did want to also share a more long-range accurate gun. And while that previous build is quite accurate, this one really leans into it. So with this, we're using the 20-inch Bruen Silver Series barrel, which helps quite a bit with recoil control, as well as gives us a nice range boost, which is a nice bonus. We once again have the OLEV laser, as well as that second side grip. We have the SA Leveler 55 muzzle, and we've got the Slimline Pro optic. Since the iron sights, well, they're okay for like close to mid-range. When you're really trying to stretch your ranges out, I would recommend using an optic on this. And as we can see here, it is a very accurate build. You're gonna have no problem whatsoever with the recoil, even at extremely long ranges. However, in this case, we are sacrificing a fair amount of aim down sight speed. Our new aim down sight time is 540 milliseconds, so you can't really be super aggressive with this. However, it turns out our sprint out time is actually slightly better than the base at 220 milliseconds. Overall, this is a great build if you're really treating this like an LMG, just hanging back, locking down a lane, and picking people off. You don't want to get caught sprinting or not aiming down sight with this, because you will run into trouble at that point. And with that, that's going to wrap it up today's gun guide on the Sakon LMG. As for my thoughts on this gun, I like it. I think it's just a good, consistent LMG. It's good at being an LMG, and as long as you treat it right, you should be able to find some good, consistent success with it. It's obviously not the most versatile gun out there. The handling and the mobility is obviously very slow with it being an LMG, but again, as long as you're treating it like an LMG, you should be able to find good success with this gun. Now, of course, that is just my opinion, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about this gun in the comment section down below. And if you guys have missed any of the previous episodes of Gun Guides, I will leave a link to the playlist in the description of the video. If you enjoyed this one, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.